10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 122. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 122 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. So glad you are here. Thanks for joining us. My name is Nick Manella. If you're new to the show, wanted to let you know that you could get all the PDFs to all 122 episodes over at our Patreon page. And you can find that on our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, and follow any of the Patreon links to go over. Choose to support us with a couple of bucks a month, and you can get all the fantastic material that's over there with that subscription. So today we're going to talk about drones. Drones are an awesome practice tool, and I'm not talking about the ones that fly around and invade your privacy. I am talking about a drone note. Now, if you've never used drones to practice before, I think that this is going to open up a whole new world of possibility to you. And drones are great because they can make us much better at our instrument, but they can also get our ears better. They can do so many things that are super valuable to the way that we play music. And it's also just kind of almost like almost like meditating when you're playing this stuff. And I'm all for stuff like that. I think sometimes we get really caught up in, practicing a bunch of really fast stuff or learning all these technically challenging stuff on our instruments, which is super important. I mean, I'm definitely not advocating that you should stop doing stuff like that. That's also essential to being a good musician, is to have great technique and be able to get around your instrument confidently. But I think a lot of us kind of ignore the really important stuff, which is sound and ear training. And I think that practicing with drones is a really great way to accomplish both of those goals in a really kind of fun way. I think if you've never done this before, you might be scared of doing it, but once you start doing it, you're going to learn to really enjoy this. This is something that I do for at least 10 minutes every single day because I feel like it really connects me with the instrument and my ears and makes me better in a whole bunch of different ways. So how do we do this? Let's get into it. So just like anything else that we practice, there are endless ways to do it, and your creativity will start to take over and really point you in the right direction. And I'm sure you'll go down avenues that you didn't even think of, but my goal here is to just give you a few practical tips that you can start to use right away. And that's going to be the important thing, is just getting started. Almost like anything that we practice, getting into it, getting over the initial fear of doing it, and then starting to develop our own method for working on anything that I present to you in this podcast is really the way to go. So again, my goal is to just give you a few things, and next week I'll give you a few more things that will point out some different sounds and different ways that you can do this. But let's get started with something really simple. Let's get started with just a major scale. And actually, before we get into this, I wanted to let you know that the drones that you will hear on the podcast today are going to be available with the PDF that I'm going to be posting on the Patreon for this episode. Now, I'm going to give the Patreon members 3 or 4 keys of these drones so that they can start practicing it. And then the pack of drones in all 12 keys are going to be available on our website for only $5. So if this is something that you really think you want to start practicing, you can go and grab those drones from our store for only $5. Now, a little word about these drones. This is something that Ingrid Jensen showed me when she was out at Western Michigan University. She brings this little thing called a Shruti box with her everywhere, and it kind of replicates the sound of a sitar. So we're doing the same thing with our drones. because the sitar has all these harmonics and kind of overtones and different things involved in it. So it's a really great way to get started practicing this stuff. So you can have your own little Shruti box by purchasing these drones, and this is going to help you out big time. I think if Ingrid Jensen does it, then we can all do it and benefit from it. Okay, so what I started out with was a major scale. That's going to be the first thing on your PDF for this week. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to just hear each note of the major scale as it relates to the root. And that is a really, really important ear training thing that you can start out by doing that's actually pretty simple. Now, one thing I highly, highly suggest on all of this stuff is that you sing it first. So, put your voice into action, and that's really going to tell you if you can actually hear every step of the major scale against that root. And then what you're really doing is you're training your ears to hear all of the major scale intervals. So, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and then you're hearing an octave. And if you can faithfully recreate all of these intervals with your voice, you really have a leg up on everybody else that just uses the instrument as a crutch to actually produce all of these notes. Now, this is not easy. Some of the intervals are going to be harder than others because they're dissonant. You won't have trouble with some, you will have trouble with others, but power through it. So I highly suggest singing through this exercise with the drone on before you even take your instrument out. Now, this is going to do a couple of things for you on the instrument as well. Again, it's going to train that ear. You're really going to hear all of the intervals against the root, and you'll notice that I put fermatas over every single note because I don't want you to rush through this scale at first. Once you've done it nice and slowly, methodically, then you can actually start running through the scale and actually, checking on, all right, when I play this scale on my instrument, what notes are in tune, what notes are out of tune, what intervals sound really good to my ears, what intervals sound not so good. Can you learn to love those intervals that you don't think sound good? And can you just get better all around with your ear, mind, body, instrument connection? That's what this is really all about. Now, this doesn't immediately relate to playing over chord changes or anything like that, but I truly think that this is going to be one of the most important things that you practice. So let's check out what the major scale sounds like over this drone. So you can hear that a couple of notes I had to really, really adjust to get them in tune. Things like thirds, you start to realize that, a third really needs to be tuned a particular way to make it sound really sweet. And you'll notice that I wasn't really using any vibrato or anything like that. I'm just really trying to match the pitch. And of course, I would have sung that before I played it, so that I'm recreating it with my voice and then I'm doing it with the instrument. Okay, so another thing that's really, really great with drones is practicing intervals. So you'll notice example number 2 is, you're starting at the bottom, you're doing a major second, coming back to the root, doing a major third, coming back to the root, doing a perfect fourth, coming back to the root, and you're doing all the major intervals while coming back to the root in between all of them. And this is a particularly good one to sing because you're reproducing those intervals every time you sing something. You're singing a different interval. This is one of my favorite exercises to do with the drone because they keep getting wider and wider and wider, and you're forced to do larger and larger jumps and then nail the note that you're going to. So here's exercise number 2 with intervals. Now, this is a really particularly good exercise to do on something like saxophone, where as you go through the different registers, the response of the instrument, the intonation is completely different. And you could hear that some of the notes are more in tune than others. Trying to do all this stuff on the first take for you so that you can actually hear what happens and the stuff that I have to work on. Got a long way to go with this stuff, but playing that octave at the end, particularly on saxophone, and I know for a lot of other instruments, that's a really, really difficult thing to do and get both of them perfectly in tune and have a good sound on both. All right, so the very last exercise is a little bit more advanced, and you could start doing this after you've worked on the previous two exercises. This one is actually taking a chord and doing all the different qualities of seventh chord over it. And again, this is going to be a great one for you to sing. That's where this is really, really going to come in handy for you, is singing it first. So I'm going to play a concert C major 7 chord, then C7, then C minor 7, C half diminished, and finally C diminished, all in succession. So what I'm really doing is I'm teaching my ears to hear different qualities of chords in succession. So I'm in effect changing the harmony, because remember, we're only dealing with a drone note. It's not giving us any feedback on the harmony. And this is going to take my ears through kind of a tour of all these different qualities of 7 chords in succession. So I'm not stopping in between. I'm seeing if I can hear everything without giving myself a chance to collect myself in between. All right, let's try this one. So that's the first one that actually steps outside of the major scale. And you'll notice that everything that I do, I'm doing extremely slowly and methodically, because that's really where you're going to get the benefit from this stuff, is you need to be able to hear each one of those individual notes if you hope to get better with your intonation in your ears and all that kind of stuff. And this last exercise is actually applicable to, what you're going to be doing in the end when you play jazz, which is being able to hear all the different qualities of chords. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully this will give you something that you can work on. Remember, if you are a Patreon member, you can grab, I think I'm going to put 4 keys of those up there for you. And then if you want all 12, just head over to the store section of our website. Only $5. You get your own Shruti box that you can take with you wherever you want, on your phone or whatever. Okay, so send me any questions that you might have about this. Next week, we're going to get much more advanced with this and start hearing some really interesting structures over the drone. We're going to leave that major scale behind and talk about some stuff that has a lot more tension in it. Okay, everybody have a great weekend. We will see you next week with 2 episodes, and I hope you are all doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you want to become a Patreon member, just head over to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon links, and it will all be right there for you. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye.